With me now is Brett McGurk. He's the former special presidential envoy for the Global Coalition to Defeat ISIS. He's now an NBC News senior foreign affairs analyst. You've heard Richard's sort of firsthand account of at least a pause is probably even too strong of a word, but some suspension of hardcore military efforts by the Turks. But where are we, Brett? And is there any way to turn this around at this point?
Well, first, Richard is quite courageous to be there, and it's great to have that firsthand reporting. Look, I think you got to listen to what the Turks are saying. Erdogan today said he has an agreement to clear an entire safe zone. It's 450 kilometers from the Euphrates River all the way to the border of Iraq, 30 kilometers deep. That includes all the Kurdish majority areas of Syria, all the Christian majority areas of Syria. U.S. officials claim that what was agreed to is much narrower in scope. I would tend to listen to the Turks here because we are.
Can you believe you're saying that? Can you believe you have to say it that way?
Well,
I'd
the
listen
truth
to
of the matter
Turks,
is,
not our American officials.
The truth of the matter is, when President Trump announced to the world last December that we were leaving Syria, and he arbitrarily cut our force reportedly in half, which is already a small force, we lost all of our leverage and influence. And he really threw it out the window on this call on October 6th. So President Erdogan is heading to Russia to see President Putin in 4 days. And I suspect they already have lines on a map that they've divvied up. And the President of the United States is pretty much irrelevant here. And our influence is just rapidly receding as we leave our bases and blow them up or hand them to the Russians. So our ability to influence this situation is extremely limited. And it is deeply troubling when President Erdogan announces to the world, as he did again today, that he plans to clean out this entire area and repopulate it with 2 to 3 million people, as Richard just reported. And the United States appears now to have ratified this plan. I don't think Trump understands any of this. I don't think he knows what he's doing. I think diplomats are trying to scramble to buy some time in what has been a cascading crisis with Americans in harm's way. And there's some merit to that, and I wish them all the best. But
look, you stuck on this job post-Obama to see this fight against ISIS through. What was the most effective way to keep the president from disrupting this operation before it finally did get disrupted last December? What was working at the time? What was Mattis pulling off? What was Tillerson pulling off at the time to keep Trump from doing this then?
Well, a couple things. First, the campaign was in decent shape during the transition. We had a good transition. We were about 30 kilometers from Raqqa. We did a strategic review that was very professionally done with Mattis and Tillerson and Joe Dunford and the team. A number of options were presented to President Trump. We could let the Russians take Raqqa. We could send in 15 to 20,000 American troops with an option that was preferred by Turkey, or we could arm the Syrian Kurds to take Raqqa. President Trump said, arm the Syrian Kurds. I think that was right. Also, during this time, there were other times when Erdogan was threatening things, and there was a phone call with President Trump and Erdogan in the 2017 timeframe in which he was very clear, don't cross our lines. So something, obviously, he's made clear in December he wanted out of Syria without thinking of the strategic consequences. And the consequences are quite dire. Look, I've been to Syria 20 or so times. We used to go every couple of months. Where Richard is standing, that is the ISIS caliphate. These towns that nobody's ever heard of, Ras Al Ain and Tel Abyad, these were the main supply lines for ISIS. And ISIS fighters, ISIS munitions, ISIS explosives were pouring over the Syrian border when ISIS had the caliphate and planning major attacks in Europe and against the United States of America. So ISIS right now, given where this is going to reconstitute its networks. It won't be the scope that we saw in 2013, 2014, but it's already happening. And our ability to keep that from happening is unraveling because the force we built of 60,000 Syrians, and it's not just Kurds, it's Arabs, Christians, many others, 60,000, majority Arab force, is now basically fracturing apart as they come under pressure from Turkey, from Russia, from Iran, and the Americans are evacuating their bases. So it's a strategic disaster.
And Brett, have we lost all leverage with Turkey? I mean, does Turkey even care if they get kicked out of NATO?
They know they're not going to get kicked out of NATO because there's no way to kick anybody out of NATO. But the fact of the matter is, they bought the Russian S-400 system, and we threatened sanctions, and they weren't sanctioned.
But our nukes sit in their country.
No, it's a big issue. Look, I was just in the Middle East, and I heard from some very senior Middle Eastern leaders, the Turks bought these Russian missile systems, and nothing happened to them. Why shouldn't we buy them? But more importantly, President Erdogan is going to see President Putin, and that's where this will be decided. And if you're not in the Middle East, if you're not at the table, you're on the table. And so we have just ceded all of our ability to influence this situation with the Russians, ISIS, the Iranians, and everybody else now pouring in.
Well, I think that's the phrase people need to hear. If you're not at the table, you're on the table. Looks like we're on. Brett McGurk, thank you, sir. Much appreciate you sharing that expertise. Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.